Hello, welcome back. In this video, we will understand about NumPy. As NumPy stands for Numerical Python, as it is a Python library that provides a simple yet powerful data structure, the n-dimensional array. This is the foundation on which almost all the power of Python's data science toolkit is built, and learning NumPy is the first step on any Python data scientist journey. As NumPy enriches the programming language, Python with powerful data structures, implementing multidimensional arrays and matrices. So, let's understand about it in detail. So, we have understood the importance of data analysis. We have also seen the different types of data. Then we have seen the process of data analysis, right? Now, let's step our journey into understanding the importance of data analysis with the help of Python programming, right? If you are familiar with Python programming, then this looks like a cakewalk because these are all some other packages or libraries which you see. Because when you go for analysis part, it's all about how you try to load, transform and extract particular kind of data, right? So if you see the popular data analysis libraries, popular Python toolbox or libraries for analysis would be, you hear the words NumPy, Pandas, Matplotlib, Seaborn, Scikit-learn, right? When you go for visualization, the prior libraries which you hear will be Matplotlib and Seaborn. When you go for first understanding the data in the format of arrays, that's where the word NumPy stands for Numerical Python, because it is a very simple but powerful library in Python which provides the structure of n-dimensional array, and it is the main foundation if you are trying to start your career to reach the aim of data scientist. Then this is the very important step. Then we understand the data, we represent data in the format of tabular, that we go for Pandas, and Scikit-learn is basically standing on top of all of this, which is a scientific computing library for understanding the data. When you go for building machine learning models, you use Scikit-learn. We go regression, classification, clustering, you have all those words. Everything comes into machine learning if you clearly follow this, right? So first, let's start our journey by understanding what is NumPy and how do we install NumPy and how do we just create a simple array, and then we'll go for working on some other functionalities over a NumPy array, right? We'll make it very simple. So first, you need to understand what is meant by NumPy, because NumPy stands for Numerical Python. It's a simple, right? Because when you just work on such kind of things, you just first need to understand what is the first thing is what is the full form of it and what does it do. It is mainly for numerical computing, and what does it perform? Some kind of complex computations without the need of writing for loops, right? Because you see, this is not a core data type in Python. You only have the data types such as list, tuple, set, dictionary. You don't have anything like arrays. But why do we require an array? Because it is basically n-dimensional array is an efficient multi-dimensional array which provides fast array accessing, which performs some arithmetic operations. When you go for list, they cannot perform this vectorized addition, vectorized operations such as element-wise addition, element-wise subtraction. You know that thing, right? Yes, so for all such things, and mainly for kind of mathematical functionalities, when you can go with NumPy, you represent everything in the format of a matrix. In your mathematics, we go for the same representation in the format of an array. That is where it is very much essential, where we store the data in the format of an arrays. That is the reason it is not built in, where we just go for installing it with the help of pip install. Pip stands for Python install packages, where NumPy by itself does not provide modeling or scientific functionality, where we just make use of some kind of or array oriented computing, where we use it combinedly with Pandas. That is the reason NumPy plus Pandas will make it much effective when you go for alignment operations, relational manipulations, merging, joining, because everything is related to Excel sheet kind of data. That's what we generally do it, right? So that's where it is basically for broadcasting data, where you provide some arrays and you just try to make sure store the data and perform some complex computations, whether it can be 1 lakh rows or 10 lakhs rows, whatever you see in Excel sheet, everything we make it in the format of multi-dimensional array. That's where we just understand how do we create an array and what made array is differing from the list. That's what we'll understand in the next set of videos. But first, let's see what are the data types which we have. You can see integer, float, complex, which you already know it, right? That's what we already studied. But what is the difference between int 16, int 32, int 128? If you see such int 60, 32, 64, 16, what does that mean basically? It is the storage capacity. That's what I have clearly mentioned here. If you could just go through it, it will be very much easier. But always make it simple. You need not remember them, and the type code your machine will throw it. Whether you are working on any kind of IDE, and whether it is Anaconda distribution or Jupyter Notebook, PyCharm or Visual Studio, never ever mind about the softwares. For this entire series of videos, as I have mentioned in the previous video only, we'll be using Google Colaboratory because it is the best environment, which is the online hosted Jupyter Notebook, which clearly Google provides you heavy computing resources. That is the reason I'll be working on it only. You just need to make sure, just have a proper internet connection. You can run any application on Google Colab, right? So these are all standard types. When you go for Boolean type and the object type, string, Unicode, which is for the characters, you have all the data types, because whenever you run a NumPy array, it would throw such kind of result, right? So now, but what is the difference between signed and unsigned? If you could see the description over here, because when you go for signed bit, it is basically that particular variable can hold both positive and negative values. When you go for unsigned, it is basically that can only hold positive numbers. So that is the reason generally when you go for NumPy arrays, it's all about the representation of data in array format. What do you mean by array? Array is basically same type of data, right? Now let's understand how do you represent an array, because generally when you go for list, it does the same thing. But you cannot go for multidimensional format, right? You cannot perform some vectorized operations. That's where NumPy arrays play a very vital role for general numerical data processing, where we just use NumPy with pandas combinedly. That is the reason whenever you see, whatever you see, any resources, we cannot directly deal pandas, where we'll first understand the concept of NumPy and how do we refer it. Right? So to make it more easy, let me directly go for the practical part of just simple installation and creating an array, right? So I'll be just opening my browser. Just make sure your mail is logged in and just type Google Colab in the browser. That's it. So that it will automatically navigate to your environment. That is the environment which we'll be completely using. So Google Colaboratory is the hosted online Jupyter Notebook which is being provided by Google. You can just start working on it. If you want to just explore, you can just click on Intro to Colab and Python and you can just start working on it. It is very much easier. If you can just want to maximize your screen, it's fine. So it's all about how do you open a new notebook, where I have clearly mentioned the differences and advantages of Google Colaboratory. So never ever worry about any kind of IDs. If you are good at Python program, it's done. You see, NumPy and list and specifications, whatever, everything they'll mention over the hint. Because if you are good at writing Python code, it's done. Everything is related to whatever the libraries we use, right? So I'll go to File and I click on New Notebook, so that I can write starting my code in this specific environment. Because you need not worry about how many functions should I remember in NumPy. It's all about the official documentation. That's where you just refer it. But just if you follow the series of videos very clearly, it will be very much easier. So I'll just rename it as NumPy, so that I can just, when I share it to you, or you can, when you go through it, it will be easier for you, right? When you go through it, it will be easier for you. So when you click on connect, because if you don't click on connect, you cannot run the cell directly. So just make sure it is connected. And the first thing is, how do you start using this library or specific package? Because they clearly mention NumPy is mainly for numerical computation, or how do you represent the multidimensional array, where the fast accessing and some kind of broadcasting capabilities, right? Because if you just go in the Google and you just go for NumPy documentation, where always remember, you need not find any resource for any other packages in Python. It's only official documentations. When you go for NumPy documentations, he'll tell you what is a new version of it. But as a beginner, you cannot understand it directly, right? That's where. So what is NumPy, and he tells it what we have discussed is giving the same thing. It's a Python library that provides a multi-dimensional array object, various defined, where we'll be working on in this series of videos. We'll be working on arithmetic operations and what made NumPy differs with the list, and what are the possible things which we can do with an array, and we'll relate that thing with the help of pandas. That's what we'll be working on it, right? So my suggestion is you can watch this series of videos, and mark my words, if you are good at understanding the core concepts, only refer the documentations. No need of any resources. You can follow my resources along with the official documentation. That would be easier, right? So first thing is we need to install NumPy, whatever IDE you use, irrespective of Python, ideally PyCharm, Visual Studio. But in some IDEs, these packages are inbuilt. But in Colab or in any environment, if you are trying to install it, you just need to remember the word pip install. But in Collaboratory, you just install with exclamatory mark, where first let me write some heading here, because we'll be working on NumPy. So if you want to just make it more, just include you double hashtag so that you could see it in bold letter, or just the font is bit good. In that way we can just make it. So this is all about NumPy. So first I'll just install NumPy. As I told you, whenever you're using Google Collaboratory, just make sure exclamatory in the beginning. What is the command? Pip install. Pip stands for Python install packages. Python install packages. With this command you can install any package. You see, as Collaboratory is already having default, when you just execute this, how do you run this particular cell? You just click this, or you press shift enter. Then automatically it will throw you requirement already satisfied and the version of NumPy which we are trying to use, right? So that is how it will generally give you. Just make sure you are good at writing this, right? So just make sure even in your IDLE or PyCharm or whatever it is, you just go with the same installation process. Because while you install any other Python IDE softwares, you make sure that you set the environment variables path. That means you set your software path enabled to environment variables. Mark the path. That's what we do it here. Because as it is a hosted online Jupyter notebook, you need not worry about the storage and everything, because Google provides you. It only depends upon the amount of memory amount of storage your Gmail is having. So that is how our NumPy package is installed. So once any package is installed, how do you do it? You just go for import NumPy. So whenever you import NumPy, see, automatically Colab is giving me suggestion NumPy as NP, because it's aliasing, which you already know about how do you alias a module or anything, right? So import NumPy as NP. So that's it. So whenever you import this, one time it is fine. How many times or how much time you are using the same environment, it is fine. You can just go through with this. So import NumPy as NP, and we'll see how do we create an array. But first let's see what is the version we are using. So generally you go with the same process. You need not use print, but if you want you can just use it. So print of, as we have given NumPy as NP, right? So NP dot, I want to see the version of it. Dunder method version. That means I am trying to see what is the version of NumPy I am using, because as it is the Google Collaboratory environment, it takes the most recent versions only. It is 1.19.5. Because in NumPy documentation you can see that it is around 1.20, but it is fine. So whatever the version it is, you have the same kind of functionality, but it may get upgraded. But if you are good at the core things, it's similar, right? So this is how you could just import NumPy, and how do you get the version of it, right? So this is how you have understood what is NumPy and what made the advantages of NumPy in a theoretical manner, right? But what we'll do is we'll try to understand the difference of NumPy and list, and how do we create NumPy arrays. But I'll just throw a simple light on it. How do I create a NumPy array? I'll just go for a is equal to, I've already renamed NumPy as NP, right? So NP dot, how do I define? I define it as array. NP dot array of I just throw a list here because we are having some object, data type, copy, order. You see, data type is optional. We can define it whether it is int, float or anything. Copy is, otherwise a copy will be made, it is a copy. Just I'll throw a list. So I'll just give 1, 4, 5. So this is my array which is from NumPy array. So I just give print of A. You could see the result as array of 1, 4, 5. But when you use print of A, you could see the result same as a list. You may think that this is a list, but no. What you need to do? You need to check the type of A, type of every object. There you go. You got numpy dot n dimensional array. That depends whether we are making it 1 dimension or 2 dimension or whatever it is. That's the reason nd array object. So this is how we have just understood how to install NumPy and what made the importance of NumPy. Next, in the next series of videos, we will understand how do we go for creating different array formats and the difference between array and a list and what made people run towards this scientific computing libraries. But make sure always be good at the basic things in Python, the syntaxes, and if you are good at writing function, it is simple because these are all packages. Depending on your requirement, we just start working on it, right? So that's how we have understood how do we install NumPy and how do we create a simple array. So in the next series of videos, we will understand the different ways of creating arrays and the difference between list and NumPy array. So in this video, we have understood the importance and installation of NumPy package. In the following video, we will understand the difference between list and NumPy. Thank you. I hope you have enjoyed watching it. If you have liked our content, please do hit like button and do subscribe to our YouTube channel for more useful content and exciting updates. If you want to learn such practical content at an affordable cost with Microsoft certification and instructor support, please register at academy.codegnan.com. You can also download app from Play Store as Codegnan. Never hesitate to raise queries in the comment section and please do reply with your suggestions for more practical videos. We'll be happy to come up with it. Thank you.